When did you realize your significant other was the one to marry? The first time I saw her, seriously. She was new to our office, Air Force, and as I was walking out of an office, her sponsor was introducing her to everyone. I said hi and walked back to my desk. I immediately told my supervisor, I am going to marry her. True story. About 2 years later, we were married and are almost at our 27th anniversary. Early on in our dating, 6 months, had the textbook signs of meningitis, nuchal rigidity, lethargy, nausea, etc., and I convinced her stubborn self that it was more than just a head cold, and she needed to go to the ASE. I ended up only leaving the hospital once over the next 3 days as she recovered to go home and get cloth for the both of us, and some homey sort of things. When she was more or less unconscious, eyes rolled in the back of her head, non-responsive, was when I realized that I couldn't live without her and that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. It's just about the 2-year anniversary, if you will, of the meningitis scare, and I'm heading across the world this summer to meet her family for the first time. She's on Reddit more than I am, so in case she sees this, I love you. When I took stock of my life and realized her not being a part of it made it a whole lot less appealing. We complement each other's personality, we don't blindly agree with the other one, and we make each other want to be the best versions of ourselves. If that's not a reason to marry someone, then I don't know what is. Our first date was a Neil Young concert. During Heart of Gold, he looked in my eyes and I felt something that I've never felt before, even to this day. We only dated for 4 months before getting married, but I'd do it all again the same way. It's been hard, amazing, frustrating, and painful, but also worth every second just to be with him. We've been married for 6 years. Honestly, shortly after meeting him, and before I was even in love with him, the first time I met him, I thought, I want this person in my life, even if it was just as a friend. It wasn't instant love, it was instant relaxation. My soul, everything inside me, relaxed in his presence. I never felt that sensation around anyone before. It sounds stupid, but our vibes just matched so well, and it didn't take long to realize that he had a good heart, made me laugh, was intelligent, mature, supportive, and an all-around great human being. Also, we were super compatible sexually. We started out as FWBs. Our 4-year anniversary is coming up, and I'm still insanely happy in this relationship. We've been dating for close to a year. I was feeling confident, and some of our mutual friends were throwing a party. She didn't want to go and wanted to hang out with me. I ditched her and went to the party anyways. I met a girl there, and she flirted really hard with me, but I just felt so much guilt. I ended up leaving the party and bringing my girlfriend pizza, ice cream, and flowers. She answered the door crying. We had a fight, and I stood up to walk out the door and never return. But I didn't. I turned around, and we had an amazing embrace. We stayed up all night cuddling and eating junk food and watching movies. It was then I knew I could never leave her. She was the only person I'd ever want again. Not married, or even engaged, but I knew I would be with my so forever about 2 months into dating. We had gone away on vacation for a weekend for the first time, and on the first night away, I ended up getting pretty sick. He held my hair while I puked, went out in the middle of the night to find a store that was open so he could get me ginger ale. The hotel vending machine didn't have any, and just took care of me, and at that moment I knew he would take care of me for the rest of my life. That was 2 years ago, and we are currently in the process of buying a house, so even though we're not married, I plan spending my life with him. The very first week I met her, there has literally never been another person who I relate to or could just talk to for hours on end like her. No one that can make me feel as happy or as infuriated as she does. No one else who can make me feel so concerned for their well-being. That's when I realized she was the one for me. 3 years this Saturday, smiley face. My moment was about 1.5 years into our relationship when we were in college. I didn't have Friday classes, so I came up Thursday night to surprise her. She got a snow day that Friday because we got like 13 inches of snow in a night. We spent the whole day out in the snow together, making snowmen and having snowball fights and making out in the snow. We talked about life in the snow, and that was when I knew we were going to get married. The engagement ring is actually being finished up today, so I'll be picking it up soon. Don't remember. I remember the day we met, and I remember the circumstances of our meeting, but I don't remember when I fell in love with her. It's only been 4 years, but it seems like I've always been in love with her. I can't remember a time I wasn't in love with her. I think there's some truth to those love at first sight stories. When I was mature enough to value traits of a good mother, wife, and friend, and then met a woman that has every one of those, I knew after about a couple weeks of dating. Of course, it would have been weird to say that. Now we're 9 months in, and it's really just a matter of saving enough money for a proper ring. When I realized that he liked me for who I am, not some idealized or future improved version of me. When I realized I liked him just as he is, and even if he never changed, I would want to stay with him indefinitely. Even more when I realized he was willing to make some changes to adjust to being in a relationship. When I realized just sitting around with him doing boring, everyday shit or doing nothing at all was so damn fun. I wanted to do it for the rest of my life. A few weeks into dating, we were walking home from a bar downtown. We saw that some idiot had ripped a plant out of a planter outside the front door of a restaurant. We were tired and far from home, but he stopped to repot the plant and try to scoop most of the dirt back in. Why would someone do that to this poor plant? He said. Right then I realized, I want this one. I want him. To his best ability, he will try leave the world in a better state than how it was when he entered it. And he gives a shit about things that are weaker than himself. That counts for a lot in my book. I know a lot of you aren't religious, but here's my story. I've been dating a guy I'd known since I was 7 for 9 months. I was a freshman in high school, so marriage was the last thing on my mind. We were at church camp, and I felt God trying to tell me something about my future, so I went to talk to my pastor. He said God may be calling me to a ministry, or he could be calling me to marry someone in the ministry. Right then, I knew I was supposed to marry my dorky boyfriend. He ended up proposing the night I graduated. We got married 3 years later. It's been 4 years, and I had our first child this past January. We both are in music ministry. Our first date. In our case, it was a long-distance relationship that I didn't want to call official until we met each other. So he drove up here, and we saw each other for 3 perfect days, and said a very painful goodbye. Then the jerk drove back to my house before leaving town to say goodbye again, making me cry more. In response to my text, I miss you already. I knew he was a keeper. We've survived getting an apartment together, getting a rabbit together, his surgery and recovery on his leg, job loss, buying a house together, hundreds of arguments over bills and money, a 1-week vacation in Florida, Disney, with his huge family all staying in one resort room, and we've recently just gotten a puppy. As tough as times have gotten, I don't think there is anyone else I'd rather get through them with. The first time I saw him, he was a friend of a friend of a friend that came out to see a band at the same bar my friend was having her birthday party at. I just looked at him and immediately thought this will be the man I marry and the father of my children. It was so strange because I never believed in love at first sight, and I was always very cynical about love/relationships anyways, very much not a Disney romance girl. I knew I had to talk to him, but he was very shy and was just standing off to the side by himself. And not talking, I made the first move and offered to buy him a drink. We started chatting from there and realized how much we had in common and started dating. In 1 month, we will celebrate our first wedding anniversary, and hopefully the children will be coming soon. Smiley face. Kind of hard to pinpoint one thing in particular, but when we were dating and talking about getting a place together, she said, we have to get at least a 2-bedroom, so we can each have our own space. I need my space. She respects that, and I respect her. It'll be 7 years in July. So far, so good. I just wanted to share the story of my parents. They first met when my mom was 15 and my dad was 20. My mom thought he was a gross old man, being 15 and all, and my dad had a girlfriend. They were co-workers, they were always friends, but nothing more. Then one day about 4 years later, my mom was on the bus home when she saw my dad walking his mom to the grocery store, and this thought just pops into her head. I'm going to marry that man and spend the rest of my life with him. After this, my mom started telling all her female co-workers, friends, that she called dibs on my dad. They've now been married for 32 years, and my dad still gives my mom a little pat on the butt, much to my dismay, but it's nice to know that they love each other, and a kiss every day. One day I was looking at her, and realized what an amazing, caring person she is, so much different than all of the others. All of the other women I've dated have been wrong in some way, dishonest, crude, mean, selfish, or otherwise flawed. When I think about how caring she is, and how I trust her 110%, and how she makes the world so much of a better place by being in it, I knew I had to lock it down. Plus, she's beautiful and has a nice sense of humor. Smiley face. She got her wisdom teeth removed along with 4 other teeth and was on heavy painkillers. We were in the car when she looked at me and started to cry her eyes out. I've only seen her cry once, and it was only a couple tears. She also doesn't express her feelings toward me too well. I know she loves me though. When her mom asked her why she was crying, she pointed to me and said, because I love him, with a mouth full of gauze. I mouthed it back silently, and she started to cry even harder. I have all of this recorded on my phone, and every time I watch it, I know that I have to marry that woman as soon as I get out of school and have enough money to get her the ring I'm planning on proposing with. She might see this post, so I love you, babe. Red heart, smirking face, winking face. I met my husband in grade 1. We had a crush on each other as little kids do. I moved away the following year, of course. We didn't stay in touch. I moved back 8 years later in junior high, and he happened to be at that school too, but didn't recognize me. I switched schools again that year too. We never spoke. Fast forward to after graduation working in fast food, and a friend of mine, also best man at our wedding, invites me over to play video games and shoot the shit. Go over, and there he is. We instantly clicked. I knew then I would marry him. We were friends for 6 months, started dating a couple months after I broke up with my BF, got engaged after a year, and married a year and a half after that. Going on 3 years this year in July. Couldn't be happier. The day after the first night we met, our whole meeting was a whirlwind of impulsive decisions, and one in a million chances. That first night, everything that could go wrong did. Yet we were as happy as could be and having a blast. At the end of the night, we ended up laying in the grass for hours looking at the stars, and he made me laugh hysterically by making up pretend constellations and the stories behind them. The next morning, I called my best friend back home and told him about the night and said that he doesn't realize it yet, but this is the man I'm going to marry. That was 2 years ago. About 2 weeks ago, we got engaged. Before we dated, she gave me scabies. For some reason, despite multiple attempts, we could not have intercourse for nearly a month when we first started dating. When we finally achieved penetration, we lost a condom inside her, and her being afraid, I had to fish it out after a week of trying to convince her it was unhealthy. I realized at some point during that time period that no matter what gross or inconvenient things happened, that we always made the best of it and laughed and worked together when we could have easily argued or blamed each other. We have been friends for years, and he saw me when I was going through breast cancer treatment. He told me I was the most beautiful, courageous woman he had ever laid eyes on. I ended up with a double mastectomy and no reconstruction. He was still attracted to me. Cancer-free 10 years. We finally got married in 2013. I'm in high school, so needless to say, I haven't decided who I'm going to marry yet, but I've asked this question IRL, and this has been my favorite answer. Well, I'd always wanted to travel the world. It was my dream, but one day I pictured myself getting off the airplane and ocean away, and all I could picture myself thinking was, why did I come here? The best part of the world isn't a geography lesson. It's a person who I just left 13,000 miles away. The fact of the matter is, I've toured the streets of Paris, swum under the tropical sun, and hiked the mountains of the Pacific Crest, but I was never happier doing any of those things than I am just going on a drive to nowhere with her. Traveling is still my dream. I haven't given that up, but I could never leave her behind, knowing how much more beautiful the world is when she's at my side. I don't remember the day, but we're long distance, so we don't get to sleep together very often. I woke up one of the days that he was home, and he was still asleep next to me. My cat was asleep on top of his chest, and it just hit me, yeah, I want this every morning for the rest of my life. We're finally closing the distance after 4.5 years next month. I can't wait. My wife and I had a long-distance relationship. I lived in NJ at the time. She lived with family in WV. She would take the train up to visit for a week or so at a time, and then go home for a few weeks. After doing this for a while, I realized I wanted her with me the rest of the time, but she was torn because of working with her mom and helping to look after her grandmother. I felt that as boyfriend/girlfriend, it would be easy to drag our heels about making a bigger change in our living situation. I'm glad we didn't wait much longer. We got engaged in August. She moved up full-time by March, and we got married the next August. We held the wedding at my grandparents' big house with a huge party-ready basement, and it was one of only a handful of events that brought my whole family together in recent years prior to my grandfather's death the next April. If we dragged our heels, that and other things that have happened since might have made things much harder on us or less jubilant for our day. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.